Does it feel like every part of your life is divided? Every scenario, every environment, your church, your school, your work, your friends, left, right, conservative, liberal, religious, secular. It seems you always have to take a side. This is a conversation between a progressive Christian and a conservative atheist who happen to be great friends. Welcome to Living on Common Ground.
Do you think if we met today, we would still be friends?
I don't know, but we're friends now.
A mob is no less a mob because they're with you.
Man, so what? We won a few games. And y'all fools think that's something? Man, that ain't nothing, y'all. And you know what else? We ain't nothing either. Yeah, we came together in camp. Cool. But then we're right back here and the world tells us that they don't want us to be together. We fall apart like we ain't a damn bit of nothing, man.
All right. So today we're going to talk about Rome's transition from a republic to an empire.
That's what we're going to talk about. Did we write that down?
I did, yeah.
All right.
In fact, I shared with you an entire document on Google Drive, and I saw that you haven't looked at it yet.
No, I looked at it once.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, you didn't do anything.
I didn't change.
You didn't
anything.
edit it. That's why it still said my name.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I haven't changed anything on it.
Yeah, you didn't even fix my typo. I had to go back and fix the typo.
I'm not going to fix your typo.
You should have. Instead of hanging out for one of our topics, I put hanging hour.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what I thought it should be.
I'm not what we're hanging our what. Okay.
All right. What do you want to what do you want to know?
So here's what I want to know. How the hell did it happen? Right? I mean, I know the popular story. Uh-huh. So because I did watch the HBO miniseries Rome. Uh-huh. So obviously I know everything about it.
That's great. That's a great series.
I thought it was a good series. What I really liked about it was that it was from the perspective of centurions.
Sure.
A couple.
Yeah.
Right. And
that was an interesting.
That was an interesting take.
Perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, because you always get like the emperor, and you always get like that. The what do you call that? The aristocracy.
Yeah,
you always
the
get
patricians.
That perspective. Yeah,
all the patricians,
right?
And the senators and stuff.
Right. Okay. So, but anyway, I am aware of Caesar, Julius Caesar, mm-hmm. and Brutus, and and all the stuff that plays out around that. Mm-hmm. Also, because I just finished reading The Lives of the Stoics. Yeah, and so that they talked about Brutus being a Stoic, mm-hmm. And then his wife being a Stoic, and connecting that to her father and all that kind of stuff. Okay, all right. So I'm familiar with that, but what I want to know is what's interesting to me. How do I want to? Okay, so it makes sense to me that if I am in a position of authority like a Caesar, and I have the opportunity to take complete authority, mm-hmm. I can see that would be something that a person would want, right? And so that's not the question. The question is but as a society, mm-hmm. as a republic, it doesn't just happen overnight. Mm-hmm. There has to be things that have contributed to where the society, the government, the people have reached a point where they're actually not. It seems to me, while yes, there are some in the Senate that still oppose it. Obviously, he gets assassinated and all that. Mm-hmm. But when they're done, they don't go back to a republic. They just replace it with a new form of empire. Mm-hmm. And so the populace seems to want an empire or an emperor. Mm-hmm. It's the Senate and that class that doesn't. Mm. So how does the society get to the point where they actually want a ruler rather than a republic? Yeah. And I find that very curious, and so I'm kind of looking at the history of Rome, mm-hmm. and you are my go-to when it comes to this particular. Well, with a lot of history, you're my go-to, But I mean, you could really be filling me with a bunch of BS, and I'd be like, "Wow, that's fascinating, Lucas." But I trust you enough to believe that what you tell me has merit. So I want to know. Give it to me. Like, how does this happen? And what would have been the signs that people could have? I mean, again, I read the book, and I know that there are certain signs that in history, as they're going back and writing about Stoicism in particular, that they see. But what are signs? Like, what are things that people, if they'd been paying attention, would have known that this was going to possibly be the outcome? Big question, I think.
Yeah. Well, so first off, the quick answer to that last question is I don't think that you can ever know. I don't think anybody would ever know. I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody in any of the periods of the end of the Republic and the beginning of the Imperium had any idea at all that that's what they were living through at all. They would not have told you that. And so as a preamble here, there are podcasts that do a fantastic job, historians that do a fantastic job of talking about the end of the Republic. Carlin's Hardcore History. I know we don't promote other podcasts on this podcast, but
if we did, I mean, where do we get our information?
Yeah. His Hardcore History has a series called Death Throes of the Republic. Very good, and I feel like it does take you back to kind of where you can start to see the beginnings. So that's good. And then
what about Tom Holland and Dominic
Sandbrook? Yeah, they do.
What's the name of that one again?
That's The Rest is History.
Yeah, I've stopped listening to that one for some reason. I've just
been listening to it again. I listened to their entire French Revolution series, which they're not done with. They have another whole section that they're going to do.
It's not the first time they've covered that.
Yeah, they've done like sections of it.
Yeah, because I remember listening to some of it.
Yeah, but they cover it. They talk about it a lot, but I don't know that they have a real series on it. But Republican and certainly early Imperium Rome are Tom Holland's specialty, and then Christian Rome definitely is some of his specialty as well. Anyway, so my point in doing that preamble is to say I can talk about this, but there's going to be a ton I'll leave out because there's just so much to it. But
if you want more detail, if you want to learn more detail, these are people that you can go and listen to or read.
Yeah. And I'm blanking on the other guy's name that is the godfather of history podcasts. He did the first one, The History of Rome, and then he did Revolutions. But he wrote a book called The Storm Before the Storm, which is about the first Civil War. And that is really where the first Roman Civil War, and that is really where I think it's fair to say no historian's going to say that the Republic is over at the end of that Civil War, but I think it's over. I think it's done. I think you're not coming back. You're not going backwards. You would be going forward into something different.
And that would have been the parents of the people that were participating in the Julius Caesar stuff.
Yeah. So to answer one of your last questions that I think I can answer pretty directly, how does a people get to the point where they want a Caesar, a strong man? Rome had lived through, by the time Octavius Augustus finally wins the final civil war. By that point, Rome had been living through about 100 years of constant civil war. So you think about a generation being somewhere around 25 years. Right. You could think maybe 3 or 4 generations where it's brief periods of everything's kind of calmed down. It's not stable, but just kind of calmed down. And then we're right back into civil war again. Okay. And so I really think you get to that point, and number one, nobody is alive that remembers
the true
what
Republic.
It was like, right? just like today, nobody's alive that can remember what it was like living as a 20-something in 1948 in the United States, right? I mean, there's really nobody. Yeah, you might be able to talk to one of your grandparents that's maybe 100 years old at this point. What can you get from them? But they're the last, right? So you have that, and then you also have the fact that that I just think when you have instability for so long, people want that stability. There's also this phrase that the Romans used called mos maiorum, which I think is very, very important. And mos maiorum is just a term that essentially means the way we do things. This is the way it's done, right? And so during the generation prior to Julius Caesar, and very, very early on, a lot of what led to the first Civil War, in my estimation, is an eroding of mos maiorum. So really quickly, you get done with the Punic Wars. Rome is ascendant. They win. That's years and years of war, but Rome wins. And a lot of what comes with that is vast new territories and an enormous number of slaves. That's a big part of this story. So Rome had always been a citizen soldier army, where the citizens, there was actually even like minimum levels of wealth that you had to have in order to be a soldier, right? And so, land ownership. And so, land ownership over yourself, all you have small family farms. This was like core to early Roman Republic. After the Punic Wars, and you get this influx of slaves, along with a lot of other things. There's consolidations that happen of farms and businesses and that kind of thing. But what ends up happening is you have a lot of these soldiers that owned their property. They would have to go off to war. Their family farm would fall into ruin. Larger landowners would come in and purchase those and put them together, and now they've got huge amounts of land, and they'd work them with slaves. And so now you have large groups of Roman citizens. They're still citizens, but they're not landowning anymore. They don't have work. They don't even have a lot of the time. They didn't even have day labor available to them. So one of the very first parts of this is this guy named Tiberius Gracchus, who is a patrician. He's an upper class. He says that he's riding through the countryside and he sees vast tracts of land being worked by non-Romans. And then he goes to Rome, then he's in the city and he sees the wretched poor, and they're all citizens. And he thinks this is terrible. And so one of the first things he tries to do is he wants to push through land reform to start. And there's a lot of detail here of people using public land in ways that they weren't supposed to. And there's a lot of other detail. But basically, he wants to do some redistribution of wealth. He says the Roman citizens used to have this land. They should have it. And so what I want to do is I want to take that from these senatorial class people and give it to the Roman citizens. Fast forward, he tries to get it through the Senate. Obviously, they're not having it because they're going to vote to get rid of their own wealth. That's not going to happen. But Rome has this system where they've got kind of two houses. They've got the Senate that really is the one in charge, but they also have the tribunes of the plebs. And that's a whole nother story, how they came up with this position. And the tribune has a lot of power to veto. The tribunate itself has to, laws have to be passed through there in particular ways in order to be able to be passed. So they actually have a lot of power. And the tribune of the plebs has a lot of power himself. However, they're really not supposed to pass laws. With what they're supposed to do, if they have laws that they want to pass, they have bills, they're supposed to send it through the Senate. It has to be approved through the Senate. Well, Tiberius goes, I'm just not going to do that. That's the way it's supposed to be done, but there's no law that says that. That's mos maiorum. So he goes, how about I just don't do that? And by the way, he's a patrician, so he's not supposed to be a tribune of the plebs. This happens over and over again too, where patricians start to give up their social status as a patrician so that they can take on this. It's like a loophole in the system. They can take on this really powerful position of tribune. Anyway, he tries to get his land reform passed, and he just passes it. And of course, the plebs think it's great, so he gets it passed. But he gets killed. So at the end of it, he gets killed by the Senate. And I won't take you through the whole string, because there's a string of these upper class patricians who are shirking the mos maiorum in order to bring about legal and social change in Rome. That, there's a strong argument that this was needed. Okay, a lot of this stuff was a real problem. These were real problems, and so his brother Gaius Gracchus kind of takes up the mantle. Like 20 years later, he gets killed, and then there's like I said, there's several of them that I'm not even going to be able to get off the top of my head, but there's several of them that this process keeps happening, and also another issue that's funny about it is almost every time, there's some sort of proposal that these kind of populists, that's what you can call them. You can call them populists. In fact, at some point they start to be called the populari. So there's the optimates and the populari. And the populari are the ones for the people.
What's the optimate?
The optimates are the elite.
Okay.
This is kind of the
Senate would be that.
Yeah. But there are populari who start to become from the Senate. So the Senate starts to have these kind of groupings of populari. Julius Caesar ends up being associated with the populari. And so you start to see this kind of division, but they're all populists. Okay, so they're basically saying, like, we've got these problems. We know there are these problems. We have these laws and these methods that we've always followed. The Senate insists that we follow them, but it means that we're never going to get anything solved, right? And we've heard this in our growing up, right? Government never solves anything. Congress just never does anything. Why can't we get the government to do something? I'll tell you what, when you get someone in there who can get stuff done, that can be a real problem it's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off because it's a real problem for stability a lot of times. So anyway, so these people keep coming in and breaking the rules in order to do what they think needs to be done. Oh, that's what I was going to get at. Almost every time, they will propose something. They'll try to get it through. They'll get killed. Okay, that's happened over and over again until they started being. If you were going to be one of these people, you would keep an armed gang with you.
Sure.
And then it would be an armed militia, like an army. And that becomes important later. But they would get killed, and then the Senate would do it anyway. They would end up like, they'd go, okay, I guess we can give you this little, like, where they could have done it initially, and it wouldn't have,
and not have to kill the guy.
Maybe not have resulted in the bloodshed. In fact, there was one guy, and I can't remember his name, but he's same thing, populist guy. He is gonna push for all this populist reform. The Senate So the Senate has elects 2 consuls. That's the leader.
Mhm.
Kind of think of him as president, like
Okay.
dual president, but it's not exactly. More like prime minister kind of, but they're the head generals also. So the Senate elects one of their consuls. Was it that? Oh, no, I think he was running. I think that's what it was. The populace was running for. That's what it was. The populace was running for consul, and the Senate ran a guy up, against him. And their strategy was everything he promises to the people, you promise double. That's all. You say, well, if he's going to give you 2 acres, we're going to give you 4. That guy doesn't even that he doesn't care about the people like I do. And of course, he won. And then they were like, "We're not doing that." That was just campaign promises, right? It's a great strategy, actually. So all of that's happening. There's also the issue of citizenship. So that's an issue in Italy, in the Italian peninsula, because you could be part of the Roman Empire. You could speak the same language, look exactly like them, have been part of the Roman Empire for 300 years, but you're not a citizen because you're a Samnite or you're whatever. And citizenship was important because it carried with it, autonomy and power, and you couldn't vote if you weren't a citizen, and in fact, there's a war that happens during this time called the Social War, which is all of the allies, the Italian allies, fighting against Rome because they want citizenship. So that all really kind of culminates with the big civil war that happens, and what ends up. Again, this is huge section in here that I'm skipping, which is Marius, who's a consul. Okay, so he's part of the elite. He gets voted consul, so he's the general, defeating these Celtic groups that just appeared right in the middle of this whole thing that they're dealing with. Now, all of a sudden, there's these Celtic groups of people that are, like hundreds of thousands of people with very good armies that just appeared on their border and demolished army after army that Rome sent to fight them. Marius reorders the entire army. This is important as well. He reorders the entire army. He just eliminates the land ownership requirement. So they had been reducing the land ownership requirement over the course of decades because they weren't getting enough. People had less and less land.
Because they're consolidating and making bigger. Yeah,
that's right. And so Marius just eliminates it. He says, instead, what's going to happen is you're going to fight for me, for Rome. He's going to say, you're going to fight for Rome. When we win, you'll get your spoils. That's how this is going to work, right? And so that's important because that starts a trend of armies fighting for their leader instead of fighting for Rome necessarily, because their leader is what's going to give them the payoff at the end. So that was an important part of that as well. But anyway, so this all happens, and then you've got this guy Sulla, who gets elected consul as well. He gets sent off to the east to fight the big war that everyone wants to fight against Mithridates. Everyone wants to fight it because it's going to be very, very profitable. But Sulla is I almost said Sulla is a conservative. He's a traditionalist. That's what he is.
That would be a conservative.
Yeah, he thinks, but the reason I hesitate is because I don't want to relate it to modern day terms. You know what I mean? But he thinks we should have a Senate. We should not be putting so much power into one person. These patricians who keep, renouncing their title in order to exploit this loophole, it's causing havoc in our society. And we got to put a stop to this, and we got to go back to the way. The Republic made us great. It made us the dominant, force, and we're giving up all of this. We're just pushing Mos Maiorum right out the window. he gets sent off to the east to fight this war. By the time he gets out there, Marius, who is kind of the anti-Sulla, and again, there's a big story behind that. Don't worry about that. Marius and Sulla at this point have grown to really kind of hate each other. And Sulla is really, as far as a military leader, Sulla is probably the only one who's a match for Marius.
Mm-hmm.
Marius is very old at this point as well. So anyway, Marius kind of, when Sulla goes off, Marius gets the Senate to strip him of his command in the east, and so they send out a messenger to tell him. I mean, just think about that. That would have been a sucky job to get. I mean, to get assigned. Like, here's what you need to do. You need to go out to that really, really dangerous guy who has a huge army, who is super, at this point, super loyal to him. And you got to tell him, actually, you're no longer the general.
Yeah.
This guy over here is going to be the general. And you need to go back to Rome to.
It reminds me of the story in Chronicles when the messenger comes and tells David how King Saul died.
Uh-huh.
And then David kills him.
Yeah. Even
though Saul's his enemy.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, well, and it went just about as well, you know.
Yeah.
Sulla just looked at his troops and he said, they say that I'm no longer your general. What do you think? And they went, like, screw him, you know, like, and so he wraps up the war that he's been fighting there. He kind of brings Mithridates to the table and says, like, hey, it's one of the very few times that Rome goes, we're going to walk away from this, because he's got to go take care of Rome. And he marches his army back to Rome. And as soon as the word comes back that Sulla has started his march back to Rome, I mean, Rome goes into bedlam. Everyone is freaked out, because here's the other part. While he's been gone, he's getting all these reports of all of his friends, his allies, all of that. They're being killed. They're being proscripted, right? The proscriptions start at this time. All their homes are being burned down. A lot of them are escaping and coming to him, right? At one point, there's a bunch of senators, because there's senatorial class as well. A lot of the senators are fleeing because they're being targeted because they were on his side. They're fleeing out to him. And at one point he says, I have so many senators here. I have my own Senate. Like, we've got enough. We got a quorum.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, so he starts back, and everyone freaks out because they know he's coming back, and he does. So he comes in and kind of lets his army off the leash for a little bit, and then regains order, and basically says, like, okay, here's how it's going to go. Everyone anybody who was part of the Marian side, they're going on a list. And if you think that there are people that should be on that list that aren't on that list, you let me know. That list is going up. All of their property is forfeit, and you get a reward if you bring me their head. And so those are the prescriptions. And so that he just cleared it all out. And then he did all these reforms. So, for instance, he did reforms to cut the legs out from underneath the tribune of the plebs. So no more just like, you can just get that position and you can command the Senate, right? Because this whole thing is, we're going back to the way that it was. The Senate needs to be in charge. We need to follow these rules. There are other things like, you're supposed to go from position to position within the Senate. It's called the cursus honorum. It's like these steps that you should take, and have position after position after position until it would take about a good 25, 30 years or so to go through that, so that the people who were running for consul were like in their 40s and they had all this experience and all that kind of stuff. Well, people were just skipping it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they would just run for Adile and they were like 22 years old or whatever, you know. So you put an end to all that. You have minimum amounts of time you have to be in all these. So he tried to put it all back. Then he leaves and he goes, okay, these are all the rules. We're going to have elections, consuls. His guy that he puts up for consul, one of them gets elected, one of them doesn't. So he goes, see, I'm fair. Like I'm gonna stand by the actual principles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he leaves. He goes, I still have this war in the East. I got to go fight, you know?
Oh.
He leaves and they start doing the same thing again. They kill all of his friends. They go, all of those reforms, forget it. So he turns around, he comes back, he wipes them all out again. He does it the second time. And that's when you get the great story of of a very young Pompey, thank you, who would later on be called Pompey the Great. He's one of the triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Crassus. That's when he's an adult. When he's a young adult, 20, mid 20s, something like that. He's sitting in front of a tribunal. He's running a tribunal, trying people coming in for prescription.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are dragging this person in saying they were part of the Marian side or whatever, you know. And he says, guilty, kill them, take all their stuff. It's ours now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says, what you're doing is against the law. We have laws in this country. And he said, would you please stop quoting laws to those of us who have swords?
I've heard that, yeah.
And that's the time. And then he grows up. So, but then so Sulla does all of this. And he comes back and he wipes everyone out again. And he says, no, we have these. And he takes the position of dictator, which was a position that Rome had.
Mm-hmm.
That was a legitimate position. So he was not a populist. He was not like, I'm taking this role and I'm just going to do he was obeying the old rules. Dictator was a position you could be given for emergencies.
Sure.
Like if Rome was actually going to be invaded or something or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have something similar.
Yeah, it's like martial law or what, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took the position of dictator and he remained in it until he could get all of his reforms done. All the people prescribed that he thought needed to be prescribed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he retired. And he really retired. He left that position. He laid down the position of dictator,
mm-hmm.
gave the rule back to the Senate. And he said, I've done what needed to be done. I've restored Rome to her republic,
mm-hmm.
the republic to Rome. And I'm done. I'm Cincinnatus. That's the first dictator who did the same thing. I'm done. I'm not trying to be king, right?
George Washington.
He's George Washington, which George Washington was called Cincinnatus also. That's
mm-hmm.
what Cincinnati comes from. And he retires and he, farms
mm-hmm.
and then he dies. But the damage was done. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. Now people knew. Not only do we have an entire generation of, those ways that we did it, they weren't really constraining us. We only did it like that because that's how we always did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now people are thinking, we still have to solve these problems. And now we have another problem, which is we all now know in Rome that the way you actually get stuff done is you've got to have an army behind you. You have now that's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Crassus has this great line where he says that Crassus, who was known as the richest man in Rome, who made his wealth in really fun ways, like He had fire brigades who would show up at your house if your house is on fire, and then ask you what you wanted to sell it to him for right now, so he could put it out. And then he would go to the house next to you and the property next to them and say, it's not looking good for you. You want to sell it to me for 25 cents on the dollar, you know, and made his money in lots of other ways as well. But that was like one of them. But he said at one point that he didn't think you could consider yourself rich unless you could afford your own army. And that was kind of where the private armies start in Rome. And then, by the time Julius Caesar comes around, he grows up. So he grows up. He's a young man. And in fact, he was on the proscription list. Sulla wanted to kill him. And many of his friends who were on Sulla's side interceded for him and begged for his life. And they changed Sulla's mind. But Sulla had this apocryphal, I don't know if he actually said this, but he's supposed to have said, fine, we won't kill him, but in him goes 100 Mariuses, or in him I see 1,000 Marius, or whatever, And if he said that, he was absolutely right. Because Julius Caesar grows up as a populare, he... The point to all of this is that all of this started and created. I mean, there's a whole civil war prior to the stuff that we know, that we understand, that most people know about the end of the Roman Republic. And so that's why I say, like, I really think the Roman Republic started to die once people started to think we don't have to do the things the way we've always done them. If there's a problem that we need to solve, we can just do it.
Yeah. So it seems to me a couple of things. One, when you talked about you don't want to necessarily use the word conservative because it connects too much to today. But an observation would be those that wanted an emperor, by definition, the way I understand it, would have been considered reformers. Right.
Yeah.
And so the people that are pushing for the change to how we've always done government are actually the progressive, the reformers. The ones that are saying, no, the way that we've done it is the way that we need to continue to do it, are your conservatives or your traditionalists. All right. And then another thing that you mentioned in this, which, by the way, I found it all very fascinating. Another thing, though, you mentioned that it is about 100 years before it actually takes place. The full-on emperor, rather than a full-fledged Caesar, rather than the Republic, or that maybe it was sort of already kind of not. But with the first Civil War, and it made me think about our first Civil War in 1860, and then in 1860, and then in 1960s. So in the 1860s, we have a actual Civil War, and then in the 1960s, you have a lot of civil reformation taking place, right? The civil rights movements are taking place, which in essence is like a second Civil War. And it does become bloody. It's not armies, but it's bloody. And so I'm wondering, like, if the Republic that our founding fathers that we always point to, that what they began, if it actually began to already crumble by 1860s.
I think there's a large contingent of historians that would say that the United States is not the same prior to 1860 and after. And that's not just because slavery is abolished. It's because all of the ideas of what does it mean to be... one of the things, very small, this might seem small, but I don't think it is actually, that I think Shelby Foote was the first one I ever heard talk about this, is that prior to the Civil War, you would almost invariably hear people talk about these United States. And after the Civil War, it's the United States.
Yeah. One last thought, because I want to, I know you need to roll. But so I was listening to one of Jordan Peterson's lectures this morning on the Sermon on the Mount. I'm on the third one right now.
Okay.
And by the way, if anyone, Jordan Peterson, I know that a lot of people think of him as a conservative. I think he's a moderate. Yeah. And if you actually listen to him, a lot of his things are actually quite progressive.
They are. Yeah.
You know, and so I think that before anyone judges Jordan Peterson, take some time to listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
I have great admiration for the man. And not everything he says, I'm like, oh yeah, right.
Sure.
There's things that I listen to, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But his work right now on the Sermon on the Mount that I'm listening to, I think it's really what's the word I'm looking for? Innovative. The way he looks at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's spectacular because of his background and
psychology.
And to be able to do that. Okay, so anyway, he's talking about when Jesus says, I have come to fulfill the law and the prophets.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know how I've always thought about that. But he takes this idea and he says that the law represents conservative and that the prophets represent progressive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about this idea, though, you can also then think about law in terms of discipline.
Yeah.
And prophets in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
And that we actually have to have both.
Mm-hmm.
And when both happen is when we can actually begin to make progress.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so anyway, I thought about that, and I thought about when we choose one over the other, what we end up with is destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we choose that conservative, or that we're going to do this the traditional way, always a traditional way, and this is how it has to be done, we die.
And if we reject anything that seems like it's outside of the orthodoxy.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, like we've talked about with the gate.
Yeah, the Chesterton's fence.
Yeah. The fence. If we just simply are progressive for progressive sake,
mm-hmm.
we end up dying.
Mm-hmm.
And that true creativity exists when both are working well together.
Yeah.
And so I look at Rome, and I see it sort of as a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I hear all the things, but anyway, thanks. That was really interesting. And I also then started thinking about just in general how this happens. How do these things take place, and how are we so quick? It's not quick. We are shaped over generations to be receptive to then what feels like an immediate change.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. I don't know if we have to worry about any common ground today. It was more of just a learning opportunity for me. And I will say this one last thing. The reason I find history so fascinating, well, one, I just do. I don't know. For some reason, I'm wired that way.
Yeah.
But I'm also always listening and reflecting on what can I learn from history for me today and for us today, because I don't know who said it. And I don't know if it's just like I don't know how I don't know the term I'm looking for right now.
Like
but
apocryphal.
Yeah. Those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, even those of us that study history, it's a cycle.
Are probably doomed to repeat it.
We're doomed to repeat it. And this thing keeps happening over and over and over again. And so if you're wondering what's going to be the result of the life that you're living in right now, do a little bit of research in history, and it'll almost feel like it's prophetic for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I would definitely recommend anybody who wants to. The easiest digestible version of that story is the Hardcore History, Death Throes of the Republic. It's fantastic.
Death Throes of the Republic.
It's very great.
All right. Maybe if I'm feeling up to it, I'll put that link in our description.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Living on Common Ground. Please follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends. You can also find a link to our social in the description. The more people we have living on common ground, the better the world will be.